Hey, everybody, I'm Sean.
And I'm Steph.
And you're watching Rampant Live with the world famous, one of my all-time favorite people on the planet, Kevin P. McAuliffe. How you doing, Kevin?
I am good. How are you guys?
Doing well, my friend, doing well. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem. And
Yes,
I see
thank you.
we have a special guest as well. I saw one of your cats jump up in the background right before
Yes,
we went on the air.
this is Smeeks if you can see him. He's hiding, he's a little shy.
There we go.
There we go. Hey, buddy. I guess he's just tired of not being on the show. He needs to get some respect, you know?
That's right.
Awesome. So thank you for being on the show, my friend.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
This is a real treat for us because you and I talk offline all the time, but we never actually get to see one another.
That's right, except when I come down to Florida, which has been too long. I haven't been down there in about 3 years, so I'll be coming back down there soon. I was in California not a year ago, about 8 months ago, so I'll be back down in Florida soon.
Can't wait, man. So much has changed, and you've waited the right amount of time to where you're going to get pretty much a brand new experience.
Yeah.
True. It's always good to space. I mean, as much as I'd like to be down there all the time, I'd like to go to my wife likes to pull me down to the Caribbean as well. So nothing wrong with going down there and doing that. I mean, that's what happened this year. I was gonna go to NAB, and then the Caribbean came up, and it was work like crazy at NAB or hang out in the Mayan Riviera for a week. So the Mayan Riviera won out that time.
You made the right choice, my friend.
That's right.
I love NAB, but man, come on.
That's right.
So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, which I would be shocked to find anybody who doesn't know who you are, but if someone out there doesn't know who you are, why don't you give us a quick explanation of who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Who I am and what I do. Well, most people online know me as the Avid tutorial guy. I sort of help out on the Avid page. I help out in the Get Started Fast community at the Avid forums, and I also do my own tutorial series, Let's Edit with Media Composer. People can find me creeping around on Pro Video Coalition, which is pretty much where most of my articles go. I have done, training. I'm actually doing a training series right now for the great team over at Mac Pro Video, so I'm excited to do that. And that's kind of what I do. That's kind of the side job that I do, sort of job number two. The main job that I do is I'm one of the senior editors at a company called Extreme Reach here in Toronto, Canada. We're a division of Extreme Reach in the States, probably the largest spot delivery service in the United States, and we do that up here. We do things it's not that we do things a little bit differently, but we have a little bit of a different thing that we can offer clients up where I work. Most people, like I said, associate Extreme Reach with being able to get your commercials to stations faster than anybody else. But what we have the flexibility of doing up where I work is we have about, I want to say 20, but I think it's 18 media composer seats on Interplay. And what we have the ability to do for our clients is that if a spot's going to come up, let's say one of our clients is Warner Brothers. If a spot's going to come up, has some U.S. wording in it, has some ratings and things like that, we have the ability to get in and take the spots, edit them down for Canadian television, alter them, do what we need to do, and basically then turn around and get them on the air, lightning fast. So that's just sort of, one of the things we do. We do a ton of home entertainment work. So, for example, we just did, we're working on the movie Allegiant. We're working on the home entertainment versioning for Allegiant. We did the Hunger Games home entertainment. We also do, you'll go to a place like the Rogers Centre or the Air Canada Centre, obviously the Blue Jays or the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you'll see that the stadium has these screens that go all the way around the stadium. They're also out in the concourse level. And basically, we will do advertising. So, for example, I'll just use the Hunger Games for an example because it was the first one that jumped into my head. You'll watch the spot on the main Jumbotron, and then what's happening around on the ribbon is all done in sync with what's happening in the commercial, which is what's happening in sync with out in the concourse. And we basically put all that together and do all the sync for that. We do quite a few of them a year. We do it for the Air Canada Centre. We don't so much do the Rogers Centre anymore, but we also do BMO Field, which is the home of the Toronto Football Club. So we do that as well. So
does that mean you're working in non-standardized formats then?
We pretty much work in, we're kind of all over the place. We sort of we'll do standard, HD, 1920, 1080, sure. 1080i, and then when we're doing stuff for places like the Air Canada Centre, we're doing all kinds of, we're doing regular HD, but then we're doing, 9,000 pixels by 48 pixels for the ribbon. We're doing, different sizes for the different screens that happen to be around. We'll also do digital posters as well. So, you'll go to, let's say you go to the movie theater and one of the screens is not a poster, but it's a TV turned on its side where you'll have an animated poster for something. We do a lot of that type of stuff as well. So pretty much, any type of format the client might need, we can pretty much handle.
Are you changing your just out of my own geekiness, my own curiosity? Are you rotating your monitors when you're animating for things like that?
I wish. No, we're only rotating our brains.
Oh, so it's a little bit of this number then. Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, we're pretty much. It's most of the stuff that we do. I jokingly say that as much as I am a media composer editor, I'm about in a lot of cases I'm 25% media composer, 75% After Effects, because as much as you can do in your timeline, After Effects is, I mean, as you guys know, it's like an essential tool now for pretty much anything that you could need to do. And sometimes I always jokingly say they'll always have like timeline Tuesdays and things like that. And I saw Avid had just done one where it was the editor of Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, and I took one look at his timeline. I was like, wow, there's like a million edits in there. And I take a look at my timeline, it's one edit because everything was done in After Effects. I'm like, there's a timeline Tuesday for you, one clip. But that's just kind of the nature of the nature of the beast where we work, just because of what we have to do. I mean, another example of something that we'll do is that we'll get one of the spots I'm working on now is Ice Age, the new Ice Age movie. It's coming out in a few weeks, and we will get a spot up from the States that will have all the characters interacting with the text and stuff like that. So our direction is make it French. So we basically have to kind of reverse engineer these spots. We have to take a look at them. We have to know what the font is, what the plugin that was used to create the font. We then have to get in, rebuild all that, use Mocha to track it, add in elements like Rampant Design Tools elements in there, whether they're smoke effects, fire effects, things like that, to basically recreate the exact look that the US does, because we aren't given the elements from the States. We can't call them and say, hey, can you give me an After Effects project? We're just given the spot, and we turn around and basically make it identical to what you'll see on the air in English.
Wow. Do you speak French?
I do not. We actually have a French production producer who works on that with us, and she will basically take all of she'll take all the English dialogue, she translates it. She also needs to get all of the dialogue, whether it's from Quebec or whether it's from France, to basically then take the spot and mix it in our Pro Tools suite in French.
Wow. What's the turnaround time on something like this?
Let's see. To be honest, it depends. In a lot of cases, it's 24 hours. Sometimes it's 4 hours.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's one of the I'll say the beauties about coming to a company like ours in Toronto is that if you need something done and you need it done quickly, we have the ability to turn things around very quickly. And we also, at our facility, have complete closed captioning capabilities, so we can also closed caption your spots because it's obviously a requirement now. When we upload to our platform, we have LKFS loudness monitoring, so we can make sure that everything's adjusted properly for broadcast. So as everyone says, the big facilities are dying, blah blah blah. But going to the big facilities do have its advantages. Editing, post audio, closed captioning, all that type of stuff. To get your stuff on the air, as fast as possible.
So with these spots, obviously Avid wins in terms of collaboration and speed. Or are you guys cutting on multiple editing platforms depending upon the need for the client?
No, for us, it's all, like I said, we have, I think, I want to say 20, but I think it's 18 seats of Media Composer. And for us, it's because we have to work in a collaborative environment. And, everyone will say, oh, well, you can work in collaborative environments in Premiere and in Final Cut. I'm sorry, but just not to the precision that Avid has it down.
Right.
And, I could be working on what we call it tagging, which is where we'll take a spot and we'll version it for air, whether we're doing, the dated version, which would be, on July 22nd, and we'll be doing, this Friday or, tomorrow or now. Another editor could conceivably be working on the, version for French. They could be working on the, the Air Canada Center version of it all at the same time inside of the same project in different bins. And literally once we're done and we close that bin, boom, everything's right there, ready to go.
Yeah, you're not doing that in Premiere or Final Cut. That's just not happening.
No. And I mean, plus, with the interplay environment that we're in, all of our spots, I mean, we get, to be honest, I don't know how many spots a day that we get, but all the spots that we need get automatically checked in for us. So there's no need to import stuff or anything like that. Basically, we go into Interplay. Everything's already in Interplay. We work in conjunction with Telestream's Vantage. Okay. Vantage checks everything in for us, and we're basically just dragging and dropping elements, into our bins to get going right away.
So does Avid actually work in these non-standard formats you're working in?
It does now, but I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to jump through a lot of hoops whether you're going to do it in the Avid. I mean, for us, it's export the spot, take it into After Effects, and do that. I mean, we do a lot of stuff for, we're starting to get into doing stuff for Snapchat.
Right.
Snapchat is
Okay.
obviously a non-conformed frame size. I think it would be a 1080 by 1920 frame size. So we're getting in, repositioning stuff, blowing stuff up, shrinking it down, to get it to work for whatever the format is that we need to get it to go to.
So I love that.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
your job stays fresh then because you're not doing the same thing over and over again.
It's pretty much, I might work on, a spot. I mean, one thing we try to do is we try to keep the same editor on the same, title just because they become familiar with it. But I mean, we all sort of know what's going on, in each of the different suites. But, a movie's promotion time for when it goes into the theater might only be 3 weeks.
Right.
So after 3 weeks, and remember, we could have 4 titles that we're working on all at the same time. And then basically they just sort of get rotated through. And then it's like, oh, didn't I just work on this movie 4 months ago? Well, yeah. Well, now it's time for its home video,
Nice.
release.
Nice.
So
Okay, so I have to ask this since once a quarter this nonsense comes around. I don't believe it, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. I think I know. I think
Avid
you
is
know what
dying.
Yeah,
Avid is
see,
dying.
you knew exactly what I was going to say. Every once in a while, you'll wake up, you'll stretch, you'll have your coffee, and it's
Yes,
total anarchy.
I've been saying it for years, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like I'm sure all the emails that you guys, got that, I just bought all your products, and now QuickTime is dead, and I can't use ProRes
Right.
files. Now, what am I going to do with all these elements? And so it's no. Everything's don't, what is it? The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
as much as everybody doesn't want to admit it, Avid is still firmly entrenched in broadcast and feature film
Oh, for sure.
work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, even up here, in Toronto, I mean, we have, I mean, to be honest, I don't see many job postings come up for Final Cut, Final Cut 10. I don't, Premiere, I see, quite a few job postings. Most of the big facilities that are around, in Toronto are still Avid facilities.
Right.
So, it's just one of those things where they're going to keep saying, Avid's laying people off. They're going out the door. To be honest, I don't really think Avid's going anywhere. I mean, it's like, look at Vegas Sony Vegas. I mean, Vegas was dead. Everyone thought Vegas was dead. And what happened? Sony just sold to another company who wanted it.
Right.
And now, now Vegas will live on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Inevitably, Avid's going to live on, no matter what everyone says with people getting laid off. So to be honest, I'm not losing much sleep about it.
What is it that makes you think that Avid is so scary? I feel that people look at Avid the same way they look at After Effects. They just take one look at the interface and immediately back out.
You know what it is? It's funny because I've worked on Avid for about 17 or 18 years, and it's funny when everyone, I was a huge fan of Final Cut 7, loved Final Cut 7, and if you take a look at the way Final Cut ended up going, it was very, very similar in its interface to Avid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, back in the day, there was Avid.
Right.
Back in the day when Premiere, to be honest, was something that nobody would ever use for anything.
Right.
And, as Final Cut started to really pick up steam, you notice that the interface looked a lot like Avid. Why? Well, because Media Composer works. And one thing that everyone, a lot of people that I see posting online say that the one reason they love Avid is that it is, I'll just say, in my own opinion, one of the more stable systems out there.
Oh, for sure.
For me, I always sort of harp on a nonlinear editing application needs to only do 3 things exceptionally well. It needs to be able to get your media in, it needs to be able to do basic cuts and dissolves, and it needs to be able to get your footage out. You need to be able to count on those 3 things 100% of the time. And I'm not saying that Avid doesn't ever, people don't ever run into issues with exporting or importing or anything like that. But to be honest, I never, ever worry about that, ever. And again, because of the way Media Composer has been developed, really, I'm not going to say not a lot of work has gone into the effects, because Avid has kind of done what Adobe's done, which is they rely on their third-party companies like Boris Effects, like Imagineer Systems, like GenArts and other companies like that to really get in and put the bridge across where the bridge was out as far as effects work and stuff like that goes. So, Media Composer really hasn't changed much because it really hasn't needed to change much. Do you know what I mean? We don't need to have all this to be honest, take a look at all the feature films out there. How much effects work do they need to do? Not a lot.
No, that's farmed out to another house. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, even if you take a look, even in Media Composer, I can quote unquote farm my stuff out to an After Effects guy I could say, here's a bunch of elements. Can you create something for me? Boom, I import it to my timeline. Yes,
Right.
granted, I can't right-click on it and say send to After Effects. I can use pardon me, it's not automatic Duck Pro Import from back in the day. It's just Pro Import for After Effects. But I can go that way if I want to. Granted, it's not the greatest of solutions, but it's a solution. But again, for me, it's, I like to export all my elements. I like to have them in one place. I like to then get into After Effects, do what I have to do, render out the stuff the way that I know it's going to import into Media Composer, no problem, and then just keep going. So, for me, and they just released 8.6 in Media Composer, which the biggest new feature was the source browser, and Premiere editors will know their media browser from in there, and it works very similar. The big thing that Premiere also got was the ability to quote unquote import. Because in Premiere, when you import, you're really not importing anything. You're just linking to, just like in the old Final Cut days.
Right.
In Media Composer, when you import, you're creating a brand new piece of media to work with.
Right.
So the whole issue with media management is kind of a moot point in Media Composer, because assuming you're not just linking to everything, all your stuff is actual pieces of media located in one location on your hard drive, whereas in Premiere, much like in Final Cut, kind of scattered everywhere.
Yeah, you can bring in media from the trash can.
Exactly. And you know what? To be honest, I think as far as, with the recent update to Premiere, that one feature, as well as the ability to start taking stuff and copying it from who knows where on your computer into your project folder, is just a huge thing. Because I used to teach Final Cut at the Toronto Film College, and one thing they love, hey, look, I'm going to take 87 elements from 87 places and put them on a project. I'm like, no, take your 87 elements and put them in a central location on your external hard drive.
Right.
Organize them, create 4 folders: audio, clips, graphics, and whatever, doesn't matter. Then you've now got this hierarchy outside of your editing application that you can then take and transfer inside your editing application. Well, I love the fact in Premiere now that we can now either copy the stuff over, we can actually transcode it to different resolutions if we need to, because that's the other bit of an issue. It's like people are going onto Facebook, Premiere sucks because I can't take a clip and play it back in real time on my timeline. What codec are you using? Animation codec. I want it to be the best quality. And it's like, okay, come on, really, animation codec? But that's kind of the problem, especially with people that are starting out. They don't understand the way the codecs work, and they'll start saying Premiere sucks because of this, Avid sucks because it's not that. It's, you just have to understand how the whole flow of Premiere goes. You have to understand how the flow of Media Composer goes. Even in Media Composer, a lot of people are still like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to link to everything. I'm going to link to all my media. I'm not going to waste my time importing. Okay, and then they, get on the Facebook and they're like, Avid sucks because I can't play anything back in real time. Well, how many clips do you have in your timeline? I got like 15,000. Well, 15,000 linked to clips in your timeline, I'm sorry, it's not going to play back. If you had have taken the time and imported them, right, they'd all play back no problem. So,
my only issue with Avid, and I'm saying this until they change it or implement it, I just want blend modes, and I don't want a lot. I just want 4. I just want 4 blend modes for crying. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna learn code. I'm gonna write my own plugin.
Multiply and screen, I think, are the 4. Add, overlay, multiply, and screen.
Perfect. That's all I need. Most people won't use the other ones, but come on.
Well, and it's funny because that's another thing where, for the longest time, and if you, sort of a while back, the one thing that Media Composer editors were a little bit spoiled with was that when you bought Media Composer, you got Avid Effects, which was basically Boris Red rebranded for Media Composer. And when you bought the Symphony option, you got BCC 8, which included the composite effect for all the transfer modes. A lot of people are also like, well, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to spend, back in the day, we'll say it was, $2,000 on, this effect or that effect. But to be honest, it's one of those things where if you're going to spend the money and editing is something that you're serious about, you got to also invest the money in getting the right tools to do the job. Like, for example, I know that at some point I'm going to need a fire effect from Rampant Design Tools. Okay, so I have all these blend modes in After Effects, but I don't want to be going to After Effects constantly. I'd rather work with this in my timeline. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe I don't have the budget for $1,000 for BCC right now, but I have the budget for $200 for the light unit that they sell that includes the blend mode, or that includes the composite effect. So it's a matter of just getting in and knowing the tools that you have at your disposal, and being able to work with them. But yes, I've sort of been on my high horse about the whole transfer mode thing.
What's funny is that up until recently, I've never seen an Avid rig without either Boris or Sapphire. It's just one of the things, and so that means I think more people are using Avid because we're just now recently getting phone calls saying, I don't have a way of doing this. We always send them to your tutorials, but they're like, I don't have a way to do this. And the first question is, well, don't you have Boris or Sapphire? No, and I haven't heard that up until recently.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to be honest, it's also one of those things where when you start out, it's a bit overwhelming. Just you've got this new, whether it's Media Composer or Premiere or whatever, and you first of all you got to learn that. I've been using I jokingly say I've been using Media Composer since version 5. Okay, now we're at version 8.6 now. Now I say I've been using it since version 5, but what everyone needs to remember is that when Media Composer started, it went up to version 12, and then it reset itself to become a Media Composer Adrenaline version 1.
Right.
So I've been using it since 5, so that's 7. So I've been using it for about 16 versions now, probably more than that. I jokingly say in After Effects, I've been using After Effects since version 3.1.
Mm-hmm.
That's not CS3.
Right.
That's 3.1
Yes.
from way back in the day. To be honest, I think the only person I know that's been using After Effects longer than me is Brian Maffett. And he was the one that taught me how to use After Effects. But again, it's a matter of, I think when people get started out, they just get overwhelmed with a lot of stuff that they need to know. And it's just about knowing about the tools that you have at your disposal, whether they are in the application or whether they are third party. And guess what? If you got a big job coming up and you know you can use it, that's when you're going to budget an extra couple $100 in the job to go out and get that little package that you need to do the stuff that you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's back up a little bit. Let's back
Sure.
up to how did you get started into what you're doing now? Where did you come from? Let's tell everybody
my
that.
God.
That's that
Yeah,
fun
how
story.
did you get into the industry? Because we're all wondering how you decided to pick a career that involves 18 hours a day in a chair.
Yeah.
Oh my God, here we go. So this is a good one. Now, I know you guys used to live in California.
Yes.
We did.
Okay, but I don't know how long ago was that?
I lived there twice before Stephanie. I lived in LA and Hollywood, and then we moved to Central California. So I've been there since the mid '90s. But Stephanie, was it
2011?
Okay,
it?
so
Okay.
so I was there way before that. Okay, now this is a hilarious story. So when I was probably about 13 or 14, we did I call it the Griswold family vacation, where we all piled into the minivan and we drove across America from Toronto, Canada to California. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, when I was a kid, we went to Disney World every year when we went to Florida, and that was really cool. But I'd never been to California, and we went to Universal Studios because at the time, like I said, I think I was like 13 or so. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went to Universal Studios. I was like so cool because I got to see all this cool stuff, and we did this thing called the Star Trek experience. Okay? And basically, what it was they picked a bunch of volunteers from the audience, and they made a 10 to 15 minute long episode of Star Trek. And I got to be a Klingon of all things.
Nice.
But what blew my mind was how they put all this together. You got to see all the cameras, you got to see all this type of stuff. And when you're done, you got the tape, or I think you probably have to pay for like $10, whatever, the tape of this, which I, by the way, will never ever show anybody. It's locked in the vault.
We're going to link to it in the description.
But it basically, that was, seeing how they did that was what sort of spurred my interest. And when I got home, I was like, this is what I want to do. So my mom started looking around to find out, what does he need to do to start doing this, to do this television/movie thing. And we ended up finding out that there was a school that was actually in Toronto, about 20 minutes from where I lived, Stephen Leacock Collegiate, still there, still has the same course, that offered a television course. It was the first course, pretty much of its kind, that was offered in Ontario at the time. And basically, it was 3 years, 2.5 years, and I basically had to switch schools to do it. And so I took this course, and when I was done, I pretty much knew that this is what I wanted to do. I took a co-op placement when it was done, and I worked in a post house in downtown Toronto. I'm like, okay, this is really what I want to do. Back in the days of 1 and 2 inch tape.
Nice.
Okay, so that tells you how long ago it was. It was actually in the days, are you ready for this, of D1. Was D1 composite digital? I think D1 was composite digital back in the day. Okay, and I worked with a guy in the tape room. His name was Matt Sherman. And he was going to a school called Sheridan College. in Oakville. Now, Sheridan College is actually well known in the computer animation industry, or at least back in the day they were. One of their most famous graduates, his name was Steve Williams. I believe he went to Sheridan. He went on to make the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
Nice.
And I took the media arts course there. So I took that for 3 years, and basically when I was done, I was kind of not unceremoniously kicked into the street, but the way college is. I mean, they do placements, but back in the day, I mean, the placements weren't really anything to write home about, and so I don't even remember what I did for a placement. But basically, when I left, I think I was working like at a nightclub or something like that. I was like bussing tables at a nightclub or something, and I got a call from my friend that said, and he calls me and says, they need an assistant editor at the Discovery Channel. Are you interested? And I went, okay. Tell me what I got to do. So I went up to the Discovery Channel. Here's a great flashback. So they were working on a show called Go For It for the Discovery Channel. This was, again, a long time ago. And it was the first show, I'm pretty sure it was the first show to do the very first Avid to Pro Tools and back again digitally. The other thing that's sort of the claim to fame about this show is it was really the first show where Phil Kogan of The Amazing Race got his start. He was one of the co-hosts of this show. And basically what it was go all over the world, do all kinds of really amazing and cool stuff, kind of like what Phil does now. And we did all the posts for that. And basically that first job really is what kind of snowballed everything after that. And it was one of those, someone would call my friend and say, I need an assistant to work on something. Call Kevin, he can do it. And I was literally working. In some cases, I even remember at one point I was working like literally 24 hours, 3 days in a row, going from one job to another, doing assisting jobs, until I finally got to the point where I cut my first show. I even remember what it was called. It was called Dufferin's Hooked on Pool, as in billiards. And I think I did like 5 or 6 episodes of that. I was still getting the calls for assisting. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do assisting anymore. I think I'm just going to do this whole editing thing. And I managed to land a job at an advertising agency that actually had an internal studio, 2 Avids. They didn't have a Pro Tools at the time. I think they went on to have a Pro Tools after I left. I was there for about 2 years, and then I just quit because it was just one of those things where it was a little bit difficult because when you work inside an agency, it's a little bit different than when they go outside the agency. And, in a lot of cases for the big stuff, they want to go outside the agency. So for me, I want to be the guy they go to outside the agency. So I ended up quitting. And it was one of those things, I had nothing planned, no backup plan, nothing. I quit. I gave them 2 weeks notice. And literally, I remember my last day was on my birthday. Okay. And I think at about 3 p.m, I got a call from a guy at the Life Network and Home and Garden Television in Canada saying, I hear you're available. Can you come and start working on promos like on Tuesday? Because it was the holiday on the Monday. And literally I went there and I think I worked there for about, again, that was about a year and a bit. And then I landed a job at a place called Bell Express View, which was Canada's largest satellite company. I worked there for about 8 years doing all kinds of post stuff, working on concerts, working on promos, working on all kinds of stuff. And then of all things, I got laid off. I jokingly tell the story. My wife was 8 months pregnant when I got laid off, if you can believe that one. And but the funny story about that was I literally go into the parking lot. I get a call from someone saying, can you come and work for me? So basically, it's like literally as soon as one opportunity ended or one job ended, the next opportunity came along. But it's all because of word of mouth. So for me, and to be honest, people say, do you have a reel? And I don't have a reel because, to be honest, I'm at the point now where it's someone, you probably know somebody who I know that can vouch for me.
Right.
Right.
And that's more
So
important.
it's one of those things where, and to be honest, pretty much every job I think I've ever gotten, they've asked for my resume after the fact. They say, we just need it for the file, so can you just give us something? Just because it's all literally been, so-and-so says you're good, so can you come and do work for us?
Right.
Right.
So, and then, I was after that, I think I was freelance for about 2 years. And it's funny because I was freelance for a couple of years, and a guy I know from a post house downtown, which used to be called Rocket. It was originally called My Joe, and Rocket was the little post facility in there. And I'd known him for about 12 years, I think. And it was just one of those things where he's always saying, "Oh, I want you to come work for us, but you're always busy working here, there, or the other place." And it was one of those. He called me and said, we have a suite that's available. Do you want to come work for us now? Because I know that you're working freelance, and that's how I got working there. After knowing, my he's actually my boss's boss for about 12 or 13 years. So again, it was just somebody I knew, you know, called up and said, "Hey, you want a job?" Which is, like I said, pretty much been my, most of my editing and post-production hiring process.
So for you, it's all been word of mouth networking, building relationships and just being really good at what you do and letting your reputation speak for itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because I know one of the things we were going to talk about was film school.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of one of the big debates that goes on now. Do you need to go to film school? And to be honest, now the other thing that was a little bit different about, oh God, now he's making it sound like I'm really old when I say my time. Back in my day, we were at the crossroads of the digital, if you want to call it, revolution. The reason I went to Sheridan College was because I went to Sheridan College and I saw the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen in my entire life, which was somebody had cut a music video on an edit system called D-Vision. Okay, I don't know whatever happened to D-Vision. Probably went the way of the dodo. But I saw this thing on this computer of this band, it was a heavy metal band. The band was awful, but to be honest, I don't even remember them. I just remember seeing this playing back on a computer, and it was the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. So that, and at the time it was, you really had to go to film school because Avids cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you get Premiere for $50 a month and, nobody says anything. So the big debate now is that, so what do you do? Do you go to film school or do you not go to film school? The other thing that I had that was a little bit different was that the 3 years that I did in high school taught me almost everything that I was taught in college.
Right.
So it's not like I was coming out of a place where, I hadn't done anything. I was coming to college for the first time. What do I want to take? Oh, this television looks cool. Let me do that. I already knew about linear editing. God, I even edited on a Steam back. Now I sound totally old. So for me, did school help me as far as teaching me anything? No. Will film school teach you anything? Let's say you want to get into editing. Will film school teach you anything that you can't learn off, or that you can't learn off something like lynda.com? No. Lynda.com can probably teach you more than they'll teach you at film school. What can film school teach you? Film school can teach you contacts. It can teach you how to work with other people.
Right.
I always tell people that I work with, half of editing is knowing how to edit. The other half is knowing how to deal with the person in the chair beside you, because I actually have a producer that I would work with all the time. He wanted to edit with me because he knew that I knew how to edit music. I could take, I always see editors that always get wrapped up in trying to edit music, and it kind of becomes, I have to have the music track before I can start doing anything else. And for me, to be honest, the music is the absolute last thing that I put into anything. I don't edit with music ever, unless it's a montage, which is different.
Right.
But if I'm cutting a story, there's not one piece of music in there until I'm done, and then I go back and I'll literally take 2 minutes to cut a piece of music together, and it's in there. I see editors monkey around for 2 hours with music, and I'm like, forget it. I just don't have time for that. So it's like, it's got to be down and dirty. And, sort of going back to the lynda.com thing, lynda.com can teach you everything and more than film school will be able to teach you if you want to get into editing. But what lynda.com can't teach you is the interpersonal skills, is the who you're going to meet there, especially if you're going to a school that's, in your quote unquote market, like in Toronto, or if you're, in New York, or if you're going to LA or whatever like that. That's where you're going to meet all the people that are going to be hiring you or saying, hey, this guy's good, you need to hire him, or this girl's good, you need to hire her. That's how you're going to learn it.
Right. But that being said, you're also going to walk out of school in debt. So you're paying for those contacts. So that's like being a part of a fraternity, which is helpful, but you can absolutely succeed and not have that. You can make your contacts later by going to local user groups, going on YouTube. I mean, I guarantee you, if I wanted to pick up and learn Avid right now, I'd go to your YouTube page and I'd go through all the training, and I'd know more about Avid than anything I learned in my film school. I promise you.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, that's the other thing, is that, you have to be part of the community if you want to be out there getting work.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I go to a user group and someone says to me, hey, do you know an Avid editor? Because, at our company, we have 7 editors that need to take 3 weeks of vacation each year, and I need somebody that can cover for them. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But as kind of the joke goes, there's no such thing as good editors out there because they're all working.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of the flip side, because most editors that I know, literally, when a job stops, they don't want to take another job right away because they're burnt out from working on a friend of mine, I know he was working on Big Brother Canada. We have Big Brother Canada. He was editing. It's like when that job's done, he just wants to take a break.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because he knows that in 2 months the next job's going to come around, but he's just got to take a break because he's so burnt out from working all those hours. So
let's talk about hours. People say that we work a lot, but the funny thing is, if my text message, my Facebook Messenger goes off at 2:00 in the morning, it's almost exclusively you.
You know who it is? Yeah, it's me.
So let's talk about that. You have a full-time job. You have another full-time job, and then you've got family. So you're a husband, a father, and you've got two full-time jobs. If anyone doesn't know, you release tutorials it's just natural. You just somehow release 50 tutorials a week and make it look simple. So how do you balance all this?
To be honest, it's I wouldn't be able to balance it very well. My wife helps me keep it balanced very well, reminding me that I need to take breaks at certain times. It doesn't necessarily need to get done today. It will get done. Also, I just because of the way I try to schedule things, I work during the day, obviously, and then when I come home, I try to make time, make the family time for, between, let's just say, 7 and 9:30, 10 o'clock ish, and then 10 o'clock till midnight or 1 ish. That's when I'm kind of then doing the work that I need to do. And I used to be it's kind of like when an editor has their first job and they're so nervous about making a mistake that they kind of over edit things. I used to do that. I used to be so worried about in my tutorials. Did I say too many ums, or did I breathe too heavy when I was like going, or something like that? And, because I'd always get people saying, oh, you know what, you say this too much, you say that too much. And I'd be reading these comments, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing that. And then I finally just said to myself, you know what, it's okay to have a few breaths. It's okay to just, one thing I try to keep going with my tutorials is I try to just keep them going very natural.
Right.
I try to make it like a conversation. If I got some ums, I got some ahs, I want to make it like you're sitting next to me, And even with my articles used to be very, formatted and done a very specific way. And I've tried to just ease back on everything, just because it not only, I think, makes all of the stuff that I do better and just, I'll say, more approachable, if that even makes sense. But it also just makes life easier, because then when I do my tutorials, I don't record a tutorial for 20 minutes and then spend 2 hours editing the thing, which in most cases is the hardest part to do. For me, it's just about, trying to take it easy, just try to keep the balance and just remember the balance. And, as you probably know, listen to your wife, because she knows right more times than you're right. So,
all right, so we've got some questions and some comments in, and Deb, yes, I saw that. Remember, guys, just for whatever reason, until Facebook finishes their updates in the summer, we're about 45 seconds to a minute behind you, or we're ahead of you, I should say. So when you post your comment, we don't see it for a considerable amount of time. But the first question is from Nick Mattingly, Mr. Switcher Studio, my new favorite iOS app on the planet, and he says, "You saw the shift from linear to nonlinear editing. Do you think there will be another transition in the way we produce content?" It's a good question.
Because I saw that video about the whole computers editing, you give the computer the content and it kind of puts things together. I mean, as far as, we're sort of at another interesting crossroads here, which is, gone are the days of the big post houses, and, it's the rise up of the every man, every woman, who is the editor in their basement, who has their own Final Cut, Premiere, Media Composer station. They can edit all this stuff and they can get it to the station. The problem is that unfortunately, I'll say unfortunately for them, is that they still need the big companies that can do the making sure that all your audio levels are legal, making sure that all your video levels are legal, making sure that your stuff's closed caption. Does it, comply with loudness standards? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the problem is that as much as companies are whittling things down to the single editor that's now the editor, the motion graphic designer, the audio engineer, the QC person, the everything, I think at some point something's going to give, and we're going to start seeing that sort of switch back to not so much being a solitary singular job anymore, that more people start to be brought back on. I mean, as much as I can appreciate, any kid in their basement can edit something, yes, that's true, but not everything that we do is going to YouTube. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And if I was to take some stuff that, that was just shot with some camera and I was to attempt to send it to a company in the States, let's say a Deluxe or something like that, they'd take one look at it and be like, your audio levels are way out of whack, your video levels are way out of whack. And all they're going to do is they're not going to tell you what's wrong with it. They're just going to send it back and say, fix it.
Right.
Right.
And then you're in big trouble because, I know what I'll do. I'll put that limiter on it. Well, that except for the fact that when you put the limiter on, you've now completely crushed all the blacks and you've, clipped off all the whites and it doesn't look anything like you had it before. So this is where, I think that we'll start to make the shift back to having a little bit more, and I say collaborative, just having more people involved in the process, because at some point it's going to be whittled down to nothing, where again it's going to be one person trying to do everything, and at some point something's going to give.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is we're now having gear and software that's touting auto editing. There's this new GoPro killer that comes out at the end of this year that will actually auto edit your actions footage. I'm assuming it's based on luminance or some kind of, I don't know how it does it, but it's touting auto editing. These people don't care about editing and telling a story. This is really promo and montage material, but the thought process transfers into other arenas. I was at Disney of all places the other day, and a producer said, I don't know what the big deal is. My kid has Final Cut. I don't know why you think you guys are so important. And just the fact that kind of mindset is creeping its way into our industry is very dangerous, because there's a complete difference between swinging a hammer in your garage and building a house on a construction site.
Yeah, I mean, and see, the other thing that makes YouTube good and YouTube bad is that if your video sucks, you'll know it within about 3 seconds of posting it, because you'll get every Yahoo on YouTube posting comments saying you suck, your stuff is no good, or they might turn around and say, hey, your stuff is fantastic, but you know what? Maybe what I'd suggest is, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you try it? It's an interesting dynamic, especially when you get on, not so much YouTube, because YouTube, pretty much any person can comment on anything, and it's like the new Ghostbusters movie, has all this hatred going towards it. And to be honest, I actually want to see the new Ghostbusters movie.
Me too.
Me too.
For no particular reason other than I think people are at the point now going, hey, look, everybody else has hated it. Why don't I just hate it too? And I'll just be part of the group.
Sure.
But to be honest, everything I've seen of that movie, I think it looks great. Special effects look great. I mean, it's Ghostbusters. How can you go wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But also, Facebook is also a little bit different, especially in the groups, because people are less likely to slam you if you were to post something and say, hey, everybody, tell me what you think.
Right.
They're more likely, especially in groups like, Moving to Premiere Pro or the Avid Editors of Facebook, or, groups like that. People are more likely, also take it with a grain of salt because people won't, but people are more likely to say, hey, you know what, that's pretty good. Maybe you should try this, or maybe you should try that, or try the other thing. And again, this sort of comes back to the community and being part of the community, and, and just trying to get your name out there to show that you're not just some, if you want to call them quote unquote Yahoo, just putting together skateboarding videos. Not that there's any, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with skateboarding videos. But again, we were talking about, these drones or whatever that will be able to edit their own footage. That's great and all, but that's then the drone telling my story.
Right.
Right.
And I'm telling my story, not the drone. So as great as that concept is, unless it's, hey, I'm going to put the drone up and I'm going to fly it over, this unbelievable national park, and I just need something that it can, as soon as I get into Wi-Fi range, can post onto my Facebook page with a bunch of dissolves and some music. That's all we want to do. But then again, is it going to be able to add stabilization? Is it going to be able to add a super that, where this was shot? Is it going to be able to add all that stuff? Probably not.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't necessarily know if being someone who runs an editing software myself, I don't really want anyone to tell my story but me. But that's just me.
That's true.
Now you kids get off my lawn. So,
That's right.
So Deb had in the same vein of that. Deb asked, "What are you doing to future-proof your career, if anything, with all these new changes and stuff?"
To future-proof my career, well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, unfortunately, the industry sort of drives how future-proof we are. I mean, to be honest, the only thing that you can really do to future-proof yourself is, to learn as many. I say learn as many of the applications as you can, but if you take a look at Avid and you take a look at Premiere, they're very similar to each other. And even now more so, look at Resolve. What has Resolve done? Resolve has really become now more like, and I'm not going to say like Avid. I'll say like Avid and like Premiere. Why I like both? Well, because guess what? Now Fusion works hand in hand with, with Resolve, kind of the way After Effects and Premiere work hand in hand. I won't even get into the whole Final Cut Motion thing because I don't need hate mail for that. But hey, good job, West Plate, because if anyone's going to figure out a way to bridge the gap between Final Cut 10 and Motion, it's going to be West Plate and Automatic Duck. So good on West Plate for doing that. It's to be honest, you need to learn After Effects because when your editing work dries up, maybe there's motion graphics work that you can do. It's funny. The one thing that gets to me about Avid editors is how little they know about After Effects. And I'm not going to say all Media Composer editors, but so many Media Composer editors are so focused on just Media Composer and don't know After Effects. And for me, I can't tell you how many jobs I've gotten because the first thing they say is, do you know After Effects as well? And it's like, yeah, I do. And they say, well, what version? I say, well, it doesn't matter because it's more or less worked the same since, version whatever.
Right.
It's just a matter of what extra bells and whistles do I have? So just get out there and know as much as you can about, many different things because you're going to, whether it's, wherever you find your jobs, you're going to find stuff where they're looking for a Resolve editor. They're looking for, and now here's the thing, they might not even need a Resolve colorist. Resolve colorist is a completely different thing from a Resolve editor now.
Right.
They just might need someone to come in and get the thing done so that a colorist can come in after the fact. But one thing I will say, and it just popped into my head as I was talking, we were talking about film school, and this has become a big thing. I joined the I think it's the Blue Collar Post. Yeah. Love they always post about these facilities that look to hire interns and they don't want to pay them.
Yeah.
Don't ever take a job that you don't get paid for. Yes. Period.
For real.
Yep.
Never, ever, ever. Because, that's one thing that I always tell the students when I taught at the film college. I'd say, don't ever take a job that's free.
Yep.
As much as they say it looks great on a reel, free is not going to pay your rent and free is not going to put food in your stomach. At the end of the day, they can find some sucker that can work for free. Because at the end of the day, for the three jobs that you turn down that are quote unquote free for great exposure, that one job will come along that you wouldn't have been able to take if you're doing this free stuff, that will pay and that inevitably will turn around to, who did you work for last? Oh, why don't you call this guy because I worked for him and I did a pretty good job. And I mean the other thing that's important is that don't be mediocre at a lot of things, be good at one thing. Like if editing is your strong point, again, Media Composer and Premiere and Resolve are all very close to each other. And granted, if you want to learn Final Cut, by all means, learn Final Cut, because inevitably the jobs for Final Cut will be there. Steph's a big fan of Final Cut, so I got to be careful what I say. But, know your editing, know your craft super well. And then once you have that locked, then get in and start teaching yourself After Effects. And trust me, After Effects is the program that you need to learn how to use because the one thing that's important to keep in mind is kind of like Photoshop. Every facility, I don't care who they are, has a copy of Photoshop. And if they have a copy of Photoshop, they have a copy of After Effects.
Yep.
Any place that does anything that is, if they've got a Premiere, a Final Cut, a Resolve, or a Media Composer on their system, they've got it on there. And if you know that, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that people get scared about is like, well, you say, well, you need to learn After Effects. You don't have to become MK12 or Troika. We're not asking you to become the world's greatest motion designer. We're saying learn tracking. That alone, if you can track text as an editor, you are now a rock star. And it's amazing how many people just don't even know how to do basic 3D camera tracking or even 2D tracking. It's just unbelievable.
Yep. I mean, and it's funny you should say that. I mean, that's where starting to know the fringe, I call them the fringe programs. They're not the fringe programs, but, Mocha AE, I call that a fringe program because it's tucked away inside of After Effects. Granted, Mocha is its own huge machine unto itself, which is, hands down the best tracker that's out there. Mm-hmm. But, another perfect example is I do a ton of roto work, ton of roto work. Everyone says, oh, do you go in and, do you use the pen tool? No, I use roto brush. I use roto brush and the refine matte tools instead of After Effects. And people go, what's that? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I literally use that on every roto job I have to do because it speeds up roto by like 1,000,000%.
Right.
I know I should say that I do it in Mocha, but right now I use Rotobrush because for me, that's the next hill for me to climb is getting in and knowing Mocha exceptionally well because now Boris FX has now integrated Mocha inside of every effect inside of BCC.
Right, which makes Boris super powerful.
Which makes it super powerful, and it basically just means you have the power of Mocha to be able to track effects inside of every effect that you work with inside of BCC.
It's crazy. I agree with Brian Taro. He said After Effects is the best software ever, hands down. I happen to agree. And I've been using it since way back in the day, just like you, Kevin. I did my first feature film on 3.1, and that was back when, when you go to the next frame, it flushes the previous frame. So,
God,
so there was no previous. You had to render out little movies with frame numbers on it, so you can go back and say my errors are in the following frame numbers. It was a nightmare.
It's funny though, because at NAB 2 years ago, not last year, the year before that, I went to the Media Motion Ball. And my wife came with me, and I said to her, there's only two people that I need to meet here. One is Andrew Kramer, and the other is Brian Maffett, because Brian Maffett taught me how to use After Effects. So I need to go. And I literally walked up, I kind of had my hat in my hand. I'm like, Brian, it's so nice to meet you. You taught me how to use After Effects. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because, from back in the days of Total Training, when they would send out, you get that huge box of how 50 discs, 50 DVDs to teach you After Effects, that was pretty much how I learned to use it. I mean, now, obviously it's the days of lynda.com or YouTube, but, back in the days, that's how you learned After Effects. And the other thing that's funny about After Effects is that you don't necessarily need to know to start out how to create complex animations, but what will really help you is to know how to get into somebody's project and make alterations to it.
Sure.
Because in a lot of cases, you might step in after another editor that's already created something. They might say, you know what, we don't really like that blur, or maybe the blur doesn't have, I don't want that blur that much. Can you just cut it in half? And if you could step in and just do that little bit right there, that's already gone a huge way. Oh, look at that. This guy, girl, man, woman, they know how to use After Effects. Well, that's great. Maybe we can get them in the next time. And then when they say, oh, we need you to do Project XYZ, then you could say, I don't really know that. Maybe I can brush up on it before I come in. You say that to yourself. And then you could say, oh, okay, that job's going to take 2 days. I jokingly say the one thing I always like to do is Mr. Scott. You never want to say it's going to take too long, but if you tell them that it's going to get done in 8 hours and you get it done in 6, you look like a rock star.
Absolutely.
As opposed to saying you'll get it done in 6 and you get it done in 8 and you look like an idiot.
Yeah, you never want to go the other way.
That's right.
Ken Wartendijk, Ken. Say hey,
Yeah.
Ken.
Hey, Ken.
He's awesome. He has a great question. He says, "What's the future of Mac versus PC? Soda pop tastes great, less filling."
I actually am sitting in front of 2 Macs right now. I'm sitting in front of a trash can, and I'm sitting in front of my iMac. To be honest, I don't think Macs are going anywhere. The only thing that I'm not big on is the fact that they're kind of turning the Mac more into like an iOS device, which I don't like.
Right.
With all this, it's like, I jokingly say that the perfect example, well, I don't want to say Final Cut's the perfect example, but my wife uses iPhoto, and iPhoto is a perfect example. It's like I still have her on the older version of iPhoto because now they've switched over to this Photos that's on your phone, and it's just not as good. So for me, it's like I'm still on Yosemite as far as the operating system goes because I don't want to be El Capitan. Now I think they're on to, is it Sierra that's next?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, let's just get more of this iOS functionality. We don't need iOS functionality. Everybody's got 6 iPhones. We don't need any more of that. That's what we have the iPhones for.
Right.
To be honest, like I said, I don't think the Mac's going anywhere. I mean, one thing that everybody has been complaining about a while is the Mac Pro. We got the 2013 trash can. There's rumors of another one coming. I mean, really, you take a look at the iMac desktop computers, and they're beasts now as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So you can do, even now 4K work on your iMac, assuming you've got some Thunderbolt drives, just the same way that you could on a Mac Pro.
Right. My 5K iMac outrenders my 6-core trash can almost consistently.
So there you go. Do you know what I mean?
So yeah, that and it comes with a beautiful monitor. So what are you going to do?
It's nice.
That's right.
And yeah, talking about Brian Moffat real quick. I love Brian, and it's always great when you meet these people and you find out they're like really fantastic and nice people. Because Brian has the right to just be a complete diva and just like walk away and slap you in the face, but he's like the nicest guy on the planet.
Let's put it this way. He is one of the nicest guys on the planet. If you ever want to watch something really great, you need to go onto YouTube and you need to look up Brian Maffett keynote at the Media Motion Ball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When he did the keynote at the Media Motion Ball, it's one of the funniest things you'll ever see because he was talking about being a guru because he is, at least in my opinion, a lot of people's opinion, the original guru. and he talks about passing the guru torch on to other fantastic After Effects artists like Angie Taylor, John Dickinson, people like that. But it's a great video if you can find it on YouTube.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so well, let's just change up the pace just a little bit here. Someone has Paul's got a very funny question that I think you're gonna like.
Oh, great.
Ric Flair or Ultimate Warrior?
No, you can't even ask that. It's always Ric Flair. It's actually the Macho Man Randy Savage, but we'll stick with Ric Flair. Ric Flair. I was never an Ultimate Warrior fan,
Okay, cool.
but Macho Man Randy Savage all the way.
Mark Foley wants to know: do you like the trash can, or do you still, or is there a case for the older iMacs?
You know what? I love the trash can only because I have like the 12 core,
Oh,
64 gig of RAM.
well, it's good
Because
to be Kevin.
well, you know what? It's funny because I mean, and you guys know this. I mean, well, especially coming from a training standpoint, if someone's going to come to me to get training on something, I need to make sure that the system that I'm on can handle anything.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, one thing that people are going to find out real quick as soon as they start getting into DaVinci Resolve is that once you start getting into larger than HD, as soon as you start adding effects, every resource in your system gets sucked out of that system faster than you can snap your finger at.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's something else, that's just another thing that people need to keep in mind, sort of circling back to the whole, if they're going to, get into the industry, what computer do I buy? Do I buy a Mac? Do I buy a PC? These are things that you need to keep in mind. You need to keep in mind that if you're going to be working in Resolve at 4K with effects, you're going to need exactly the system that they say you're going to need. It's not like one of those, oh, that's just, the recommended system requirements type of thing. No. If they say it needs it, trust me, it needs it. So, and even for me with the trash can, when I'm putting effects on in Resolve at 2K, it's thinking about it when it's putting it on, and I can hear the fans start, I can hear the gears, the cogs turning in the Mac Pro for it to process that stuff. So, so it's just a matter of just, knowing what you want to do, and don't try to push the system farther than you can push it because it's just going to lead you to problems.
What machines are you using to do these really crazy large format projects at work? Are they trash cans?
No, actually, we're all PC. We're all PC at the office. I use an HP Z820.
Nice.
I pretty much a lot of the work that we do, we end up having a lot of editors have two systems in their room because they'll have one as a graphic station, one as an editing station because they might need to switch over quickly and just do some graphics, while they're rendering something or exporting something. So they have the flexibility to do that. For me, because I have the fastest, because I was the only person that was on a Mac at the time when they switched me over, the Z820 was pretty much I don't want to call it the Avid standard, but it was pretty much, we had Z800. So the Z820 was the one at the time. So that was what I ended up getting. So pretty much everything I do at the office is all sadly PC based.
Well, there's nothing sad about that. I mean, but you have to admit it's faster.
It's super fast at the office. I don't know if it's faster than my Mac Pro trash can, the one that I have at the office, but it's lightning fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The other thing that's also important to keep in mind is that, you want your applications to run faster, put a solid state drive in there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Get that as your main operating system hard drive. Don't necessarily worry about, the media drives being solid state or anything like that. I mean, like I've got a G-RAID 24 terabyte drive beside me that's on a Thunderbolt 2. I do 4K. I've got 4K red stuff that runs on this thing. No problems, no drop frames, no anything. So it's not like, oh, I gotta have these solid state drive. No. Just stick with what it does best. Like my Mac does Thunderbolt best. Again, at the office, we're all on Interplay and ISIS. So I see the cat just decided cat decided show's over.
Nico says he's done with all this Avid talk.
Right. So it's so at the office again we're on Interplay, we're on fiber and that type of stuff. So it's a bit of a different beast, But like I said, at home you want to make sure that you've got a system that's more powerful than what you're going to need to do. So you just don't don't have to go on Facebook. Why is this not running the way that it needs to?
Ronell, hey man, how's it going? He says don't edit in Resolve with NR on.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go.
So there you go.
Mark, I think you jumped in a little bit late. Kevin can comment on this again, but Mark says, what's the largest so far, 5K, 6K, or more? You said at one point you were doing 9,000 pixels wide on one project.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, we were doing 9,000 pixels wide, but it was only 24 pixels high.
Okay,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So it's basically what, it's we call it just a ribbon because that's basically what it looks like when it goes around the stadium. So for us, we're not really doing the full, and plus we're not worried about playback in an editing system in real time. I'm previewing all this in After Effects so that I can see it because at the end of the day, maybe my deliverable is a Windows media file or a QuickTime animation. Right? It obviously, because a lot of companies work on their proprietary systems that will play back this type of stuff, they have a specific type of file format.
Sure.
So it never, for me, comes back into a nonlinear editing application. It's rendered out of After Effects and then delivered to wherever it needs to go to.
So when you're doing that, After Effects is terrible about going to those kinds of compressed formats. So do you render out like DNxHR or do you render out a ProRes and then convert it in Windows Media, or what are you doing?
In most cases, I'll render out, believe it or not, as animation codec, and then I'll go into Media Encoder and then flip it over to Windows Media or to, then it gets, I mean, if it needs to be like, obviously we're talking about specific format sizes, but if it needed to be, let's say it was 1920 by 1080 ProRes, then we have a Mac that I would go to flip it over to, or even our Vantage system can flip the files over to ProRes for us as well. So
That's cool.
That's very cool.
yeah.
Very nice.
So let's talk about the fact that you're a working professional and a trainer who also went to college. What would you tell a 21-year-old who doesn't know if they want to go to school but definitely wants to do video? What would you tell them now and how to get into this industry?
What would I tell myself? Well, I'll tell you what I would tell myself. What I would tell myself is that I was at an interesting crossroads about 12 years ago. So this is a little bit, this is not 21-year-old me. This would be about, oh God, I don't want to, okay, now I've just said it. This would be about 30-year-old me. And I was pretty much going to pack the bags and I was going to move to LA. Not for any reason that there was no work in Toronto or anything like that. I was just like, I think I need a change. And I didn't. Everything that's happened to me, I've gone on instinct and I've gone on my gut feeling. And your gut will never lead you wrong. And if I'd gone to LA, and I didn't stay here, I wouldn't have met my wife and I wouldn't have got married. So I wouldn't have had, that joy in my life. And that was just another thing that, much like every job that I've had, has just been instinct where, if you stick with your gut will never lead you wrong. It's kind of like the whole taking free work. Your gut will always tell you that it's just not worth it. But sometimes you just do it with the hope that it will be worth it. But your gut will always say it's not worth it. So if you go with your gut will never lead you wrong. So I tell 21-year-old me, stick with what your gut tells you because it's not going to lead you wrong.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. So what's the biggest challenges that you faced ever? Like the biggest challenge you've had to do?
The biggest challenge I ever faced ever. The biggest challenge, well, sort of, I guess in the one, the one thing that I find, very good about working where I work at Extreme Reach in Toronto is that we kind of have become the subject expert on everything, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it's because we have clients that send us all kinds of different formats, resolutions, codecs. We'll get files that might have field dominance issues, pull down issues, all this type of stuff. We have files that we need to send to the theater, so we're making DCPs, we're doing things like that. It's one of these things where literally whether the content is new every day or not at my job, it's always something that's different. Whether I'm learning something new about Vantage, whether I'm learning something new about this resolution or pull down or something for the cinema or something like that. For me, every day is just constant learning, which for me is like it's a really cool thing just for me because in a lot of cases, editing jobs can become, I don't want to say boring, but they can become very repetitive depending on what you're working on. But where we work, because we work on so many different things, so many different, end products, it always just keeps things really cool and really different.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what's the next big thing that you really want to learn that you're looking forward to learning?
Next thing that I really want to learn. Well, it's not that I was going to say, it's not that I not really want to learn it, but the one thing that I need to learn is Mocha Pro.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mocha probably about 10% of what it can do. I'll probably say, now, okay, I'll give myself a little bit of credit. I'll say 15% of what it can do. And for me, it's now started to become such an essential tool, especially when we start doing French productions and we have text that's moving across the screen, where we have characters that are interacting with it, they're moving across the screen, things like that. It's such an essential tool, and I literally can only scratch the surface of what it can do. And I always, I jokingly talk about the gurus. There's so many gurus out there. Brian Maffitt's a guru. For me, the mocha guru is Mary Poplin. She is like the Ben Brownlee. He's also a great mocha guru. And so for me now, it's just a matter of, I think I have some spare time between like 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. where I can not sleep and I can watch tutorials that they've posted over, whether it's on the Boris Effects website. I think Ben Brownlee's is Curious Turtle. I think that's his website. Where I can actually start to learn about, the remove module and all that type of stuff, because, again, that's just another thing where you might see a job posting come up that says we're looking for a mocha artist because we got all this tracking work and we don't know how to do it, or we have all this roto work and we don't know how to do it. And again, because mocha is now integrated in After Effects, it's integrated in BCC. Now remember, this is BCC in Media Composer. This is I think it's in BCC in After Effects in the actual effects themselves. It's in After Effects in general. Mocha 5 is a standalone plugin as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
It does roto. It does all this type of stuff. And guess what? You want to get into feature films? They're always looking for roto artists. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's just another thing that I just want. For me, I just want to have under my belt. I mean, the one thing I'd also like to learn is Cinema 4D, but that's just, for me right now, the amount of time that would take. I kind of have to put that on the side burner, and I want to put mocha on the front burner to learn that, because that's also something that for me directly impacts the work that I do, because it just means that I can get the jobs done for the clients faster than I could before.
That makes sense. Yeah, we both want to. Well, I want to learn Cinema 4D definitely, but I watched Sean do it, and I'm like, ew,
It's its own beast. I mean,
I'm not quite there yet. So
you got to have a lot of dolls on your desk, and you got to really love 3D. So it's just not. I love 3D, but man, for the stuff that we do, it's mostly text. So I can probably get away with Element 3D 9 times out of 10.
Totally, yeah. And that's the other funny thing. It's like then you'll get effects and plugins like Element 3D that support Cinema 4D. Whether they're models or elements or any type of thing like that work right in there. You can now just import basically Cinema 4D models directly into After Effects to work with. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's kind of like anything. It's, guess what? I need a fire element. Well, let's see. I could go out and I could set some stuff on fire, and I could go and rent a camera, and I could film all this. Or guess what? Rampant Design Tools has a fire element that I could just go and buy for how much that I can get it for, and just use it that way. For me right now, when it comes to Cinema 4D, it's like, okay, what do I need? I need a DVD cover. Well, let me just go into one of these websites where I can buy one of those, and I can just use it that way. Because for me right now, it's just I don't have the time to learn Cinema 4D. Even though it's every year when I go to NAB, I just walk past the Cinema 4D booth. I go, ooh, I'm looking at all the stuff they're creating, and it's like it's just blows my mind that on a again. On a little iMac that you could create all these unbelievable things. Like I think I saw one year like Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean, all his tentacles moving around in Cinema 4D, and I was just like, man, that's insane that conceivably you could just do that in your house at home.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, all the 3D modelers I know, it's their life. You go to Grayscale Gorilla, and these are it's an intense thing. It's an entirely different craft. So just picking up Cinema 4D is like just picking up building cars.
Yeah, for sure.
We got a lot of questions now all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So,
well, you read because you can see them better than I can.
Okay, scrolling down just a little bit, we got a lot. Paul Watkins says, "What do you do to unplug?"
I try to go to Disney World whenever I can, but the 3,000 kilometers is a little bit far. No, what I do to unwind is I play. I'm a gamer. I used to be more of a gamer than I am now, and you know that as well, because occasionally I see you on Xbox Live.
That's true. That's true.
But I play some video games whenever I get a chance. For me, it's my wife is my best friend, so it's when I try to unwind, it's I'll try to go to we go out to dinner, I try to go to the movies, as much as I can go to the movies, just because when you work in the business and you're seeing stuff for the lengths of time that I see it, it's like you kind of feel like you've seen the movie, but we try to get out and go to the movies. It's just try to do stuff like that, even if it's like go down after I've done working at 11 o'clock at night and just play a game for an hour. I try to do that just to unwind my brain, just because as you guys know, because you run your own business, the work never stops.
Right.
As much as my job is Monday to Friday, the other work literally just, unless I stop it, will never stop.
Yep.
So I just try to make sure, that, my wife keeps me in check. We just try to, get out of the house as much as possible, whether it's, go away for the weekend, whether it's just, get out of the house for a day on the weekend, just try to do stuff like that to cool the brain down a bit.
Yeah, we completely agree. We're right there with working. So,
But we have the parks.
but we
so-
do have Disney right down
Yeah,
the street.
you guys
So
are down the street. I live vicariously through all your Sean and Steph travel posts, so you guys need to post more of that.
Yeah, we do. We need to get out of the house more.
we do. So Mark Foley had a question. He asks, "What is the worst train wreck you've had to fix?"
The worst train wreck I had to fix. I wouldn't say it's the worst train wreck I ever had to fix, but one of the most interesting situations I was ever put in was that I worked on a concert. I don't remember who the concert was for, but what happened was the concert was done, it was all shot and everything, and they took a look at it and they decided that the light behind the singer was red. And they decided they didn't like that and they wanted it to be blue. And I wasn't given, the way that we used to do some of the concerts was that it was shot in a mobile.
Right.
So you were given the line cut. And you'd be given, at certain point, all of the alternate camera angles for you to then go in and fix whatever needs to be fixed. But you didn't have any of the edits. So in an hour and a half concert, I had to go in and add edits for every shot. I then had to go in and do roto and color correction on every shot to fix that light to make it blue. And it was the craziest thing because, to be honest, it was actually, and I remember what it was. It wasn't the producer. It was actually the singer who saw it and said they didn't like the red light. They wanted it to be blue. Now, luckily, they were wearing all black.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go.
Because if they were wearing white, we would have been in real trouble.
Right.
That was a long time. Oh, man, that was a long time ago.
I have to ask this. There's plenty of questions, and we're going to get to every single one of them, guys. Don't worry. But I have to ask this. As someone who's done so many supervised sessions, both as an editor and visual effects artist, the one thing that drives me up a wall, and you're a lot nicer person than I am, but the one thing that drives me up the wall is the snap. I don't need you to snap at me. I'm not a waiter. Don't snap at your waiters either, people. Do not do that. But has it ever happened to you?
It's funny because a lot of the jobs that I've done, to be honest, I've worked on supervised. When I was an online editor for when I worked at Life and Home and Garden, I did promos. I did promos during the week from 5:30 till 1:30 in the morning. Then on the weekends, I did onlines for shows. And I had someone sit with me for the first two onlines, and then they're like, you know what you're doing. You can just do it. Where I work today at Extreme Reach, we have coordinators that keep all of our projects on target and making sure that things are getting done when they need to be done and making sure clients are getting approvals. But otherwise, we really, we do most of the work ourselves. Obviously, we have someone that comes in to approve all of the stuff we do, but we work by ourselves. Even when I worked for a great company a while back called Hi-Fi HD TV. They're now part of a company called Blue Ant Media. And when I did interstitials for them, these were like 2 to 3 minute actual story-driven pieces. I would have a producer come in, and because they were working on so much stuff, they'd literally come in with their paper edit and say, here, all the footage is in the system. Here's my notes. Call me when it's done. And, this is one of those situations where just because of the reputation I had, they know that they could leave, and in 2 hours I would call them and say, come and look at something. And it was about 95% of the way there. And it was really, can we just change this, and can we tweak this, and can we do this and do that? But luckily, like I said, for me, most of the work that I do is, when I work at home, I'm pretty much working by myself. But even, in a lot of the day-to-day work I do, I'm working solo on a lot of this stuff. Again, obviously minus approvals that need to be done. But so that's, it's an interesting thing, working that way. Although, granted, on the flip side, today, actually, I just work with some great clients, working on some commercials, and I guess it really depends on the producers that you're with, because these guys, super laid back, super great guys, they knew pretty much what they wanted, and they would describe it to me, and then they would just let me do my thing. And then about 15 minutes, I would say, okay, what do you think of this? Oh, okay, well, what about this? Blah, blah, blah. They tell me, boom, I go back to doing my thing, and it was kind of like the waves of the ocean. which is those are always the type of clients that you like working with.
Yeah. I've had good clients as well, but every once in a while you get that one who is texting with their mouth. They're actually speaking their text, so it's like, tell Andrea, comma, that I'll be late. It's like, and you're editing, or they're snapping, or they're on the phone. The worst, my biggest pet peeve. You're in the trenches, and the producer's on the phone, like, yeah, I've been editing all day.
Yeah.
This is such a pain. I'm like, you ain't touched no keyboard. I'll tell you that right now. I'm the one who's editing.
Let's put it this way: the one thing that always stands out in my head, and I won't say where it was when it was said to me, but it was when I was starting out. I had someone had wanted me to edit something, and I literally had worked on it for an hour. Now this was a pretty big thing, and they walked in, they said, "Show me what you have." I was like, "It's been like an hour. Nothing had been digitized. Like I had to back in the days we had to digitize everything, right?
Right.
So I had to digitize everything, and I literally had been working on an hour. This was probably an edit that would have taken about 2 or 3 days to do. He took one look at what was in my timeline and said, "Can you put this on a tape?" And I went, "Okay. Why do you want it on a tape?" He said, "I want to send it to New York and have a real editor look at it."
Oh,
And I went,
Yikes.
That's when you kick the power plug. Whoops. Oh man.
That was when I was starting out, and it's one of those things where that, in a lot of cases, I think all that did was just piss me off and make me more determined. A lot of people would let that set them back, but it just pissed me off and made me more determined with this particular client. So long time ago. That was probably about a good 15 years ago.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone speaking that way to you now.
No.
So Philip Andrew Nichols.
I'd say, tell you what, you can just send it to me then.
Right.
Just send it to my address.
Nice. Philip Andrew Nichols has a couple questions here for you. He says, "I'm going to have 2 interns this fall. What would be the best thing for me to teach them to help prepare them for working with video production houses?" And he couples that with, "And how do I deal with what you said about not paying interns? I try to pay them when they directly make profit for the company."
Well, the thing that's important to keep in mind is that, if they're going to be touching the system and doing anything that's editing related, they are making money for the company, whether they're logging, whether they're digitizing, because inevitably an editor's got to edit that. And you're either going to pay the editor $100 an hour, or you're going to pay this intern $20 an hour to do that job. Now, to me, it just makes more sense to pay the intern $20 an hour to do that. Now, I've seen a lot of places where, I'll say that there's the hierarchy, and whether it's a union shop or not doesn't really matter. Excuse me. There's the hierarchy of, I'm an editor and I'm not going to digitize, or I'm an editor and I'm not going to log. So I'd always have a good laugh. When I was online, and I'd have a producer come in and say, "Oh, I don't have anything digitized. Do you mind digitizing?" And I'm like, you're paying me my rate whether I digitize or whether I don't digitize. You know what I mean? Whether I'm editing or whether I'm digitizing, you're paying me anyways. But to be honest, I mean, if it's post-production and editing related, organization, if they're going to be an assistant, which to be honest, it sounds like they would be, it's organization, it's digitizing, it's logging, it's, you might go out and be shooting with, whether it's XD cam or red, you're going to bring the cards back. They're going to get all those cards. They're going to bring them into the system. They're going to then get in and they're going to color code the shots. They're going to name all the shots. They're going to, you know what I mean? They're going to get in, and they're essentially going to be the key point in organizing your projects. When I was an assistant, I always made sure that when I was working on something, that the organization was the key. I'd always have all the cards divided up into separate bins. I'd also get in there and I would name each shot. If there was a camera shake in the shot, I would put a little category that says camera shake, yes, no, good. And I'd even get in, and depending on who the editor I was going to be working with was, I'd know the type of shots I'd want to use and say, you know what I did? I subclipped a bunch of shots into this bin that I know that you'd probably use for B-rolls or cutaway, so it's all set for you to go. So basically, when the editor sits down, they don't have to think of anything. All their sound effects have been imported, all their music's been imported, all their clips have been subclipped, all their clips have been digitized. They literally sit down and start editing right away. That's the type of stuff that's good, because not only does it give the intern a familiarity with the system, but one thing that it will also do is that if problems arise, it's going to teach them how to troubleshoot, which is another huge thing that every editor needs to know how to do. Because I've seen so many editors stop an edit saying, the edit system won't do this. You know what? There's 6 ways to edit a clip into a timeline in Media Composer. If ways 1 through 5 aren't working and 6 is, use 6.
Right.
And just keep using 6 until 1 through 5 either resolves itself, or, you know what I mean, or you upgrade to a new version. But again, like I said, if the intern's doing anything that's related to the production, in my opinion, they need to be paid for it. And to be honest, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you get the intern to do is going to be making money for the company, whether it's, again, digitizing, whether it's you have them out on shoots logging stuff in the field. That's helping the production, because when those notes come back, an editor's going to need them, and they wouldn't have had them, and you would have had to pay them to do it if you didn't pay this person $20 an hour. I mean, I'm just throwing out obviously an arbitrary number for $20 an hour, because I don't know what the going rate is for an intern, especially in the U.S. But they should be paid something.
The going rate is
The going
zero.
rate's
That's
zero.
the sad part.
Well, yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I guess the other question is when I did what was called a quote unquote internship, it was called a co-op placement. We weren't paid because it was directly what I was getting paid with was credits for school.
Right.
That's different. It's different when somebody is not in school. You're hiring them to learn, but you're also making them do stuff that's making money for the company. They should get something.
I agree. And in the States, every state has a different law when it comes to internships.
Yep.
So you should be very careful, because if you're doing something wrong and the intern figures it out, they're going to drop the dime pretty quickly. So
100%. And the other problem is that the other thing that's important for the intern to keep in mind is that hindsight's 20/20, and it's always 1,000 times more difficult to get the money after the fact than it is to say, even if it's, like I said, even if it's $10 an hour, it doesn't matter. I don't know what obviously minimum wages vary based on the state, but even minimum wage is something, because at least at the end of the day, you can go to McDonald's and buy food.
Right.
That's exactly right.
That is exactly right. So let's talk, unless there's somebody else who's got another question. Oh, yes.
Nelson Tom has a question for you. He says, besides
Nelson Tom. Oh, no.
Nelson Tom.
I worked with Nelson Tom back in my Expressview days, if that's the Nelson Tom I'm thinking about.
Yep, that's what he said. He said, besides working with me 10 years ago, was there a highlight or an edit? And I just lost it.
Oh, yeah. People are jumping in
Was
like
there a
crazy now.
highlight or an edit that you were most proud of?
That I was most proud of? Oh, man. I don't know. Well, okay, I'll tell you about my most memorable one. Okay, so the most memorable edit that I ever had was when I first started dating my wife. She is a huge Sarah McLachlan fan. I love Sarah McLachlan, her favorite singer in the whole world. And we were working, back then we worked on a lot of concerts when I worked at Expressview, and one of the concerts we did was, we have a station up here called Much Music. It's basically Canada's equivalent of MTV.
Mm-hmm.
But in Quebec, there's the equivalent called Musique Plus, which is basically Much Music, the French version. And they were doing a mobile production for the Sarah McLachlan concert that they were shooting live, that was going to air on Musique Plus, that we were going to do all the post-production for. So my friend, who was the technical director on the show, said, "Oh, if you happen to want to come by, you can come to Montreal and you can come and get in, and you can come and see the whole show and all that type of stuff." And I'm like, not really, I'm not a Sarah McLachlan fan, but of course at the time I don't think I realized how big of a fan she was. My girlfriend at the time, my wife was of Sarah McLachlan. I said to her, "Yeah, my friend said that we can come to Montreal and see Sarah McLachlan." She's like, "Really? Can we do it?" And so we ended up going to Montreal. Got to see the whole thing. She got to sit 5 feet from her most favorite singer in the whole world. And then when I went back, I got to cut the whole thing, which was for me one of the biggest things that I worked on as far as in the music industry. I mean, I've worked on bigger things in television, stuff like that, but for me it not only was an interesting experience because I don't want to say that that's what I used as the hook to impress my girlfriend at the time. But also, as far as the production goes, it was a really cool production because it involved a lot of multicam work, a lot of mobile work. It also involved a lot of, audio post, especially, when you're dealing with singers, they want their voice to sound a very specific way. So it had to do a lot of that, a lot of dealing with the management and stuff like that. But when it was done, the end result was really, really good. And I married my girlfriend, so it worked out.
Yeah, that worked out really well,
That
actually.
worked out. That was good.
So
and of course, working with Nelson Tom was also one of the biggest honors of my life. What can I say? So
nice. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's talk about your favorite subject in ours, Disney.
Yeah.
Love it.
So
I'll always talk about it.
so I'm going to start off with saying Disneyland or Disney World.
Oh no!
Yeah, you got to make an. You got it. You can't say, well, no. There's a definite right answer.
This might surprise you, Disneyland.
No, it doesn't surprise me.
No,
That's the correct
That's
answer.
the correct way.
It was one of those things where when we went to Disneyland last year, I think we were only at the park 3 days, But it was one of those things where I like literally just walked around. I probably was my mouth was probably hanging open the whole time, just walking around looking at everything and just as because I've been going to Disney World since I was 5, and I'm 40. I'm going to be 42 at the end of this month. So I've been going to Disney World since I was 5, and I'd only been to Disneyland. That was the second time I'd only ever been to Disneyland, and I'd never been to California Adventure. And just walking around there and looking at everything and just seeing how they dealt with the space that they had to fit all this stuff in was just amazing and mind-boggling. And for any Disney fan, it's the park that Walt walked in. So you always want to go to the park that Walt walked in. And I got to go for the 50th, so that was or 60th, pardon me. So that was a big thing. So definitely Disneyland, and I just gotta convince my wife that we definitely need to make another trip to LA.
Yeah, I mean, Walt Disney World's fun, but I think every Disneyland counterpart is better. I think the Pirates is better, the Space Mountain is better, the Buzz Lightyear is better. It's hard for
except for one.
Which one is it?
Splash Mountain.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was all excited to go on Splash Mountain at Disneyland, and I've got all the songs memorized and everything, and I start singing along, and I'm like, this is not the song. Where's the song? Why is the song not? And it was literally because they only have a very limited space to deal with. The ride is about a third the length that it is in Florida, so you don't get a lot of the animatronics that you get in Florida. And so it's just a lot faster experience. Whereas, like you said, Space Mountain completely blows away the one in Florida. Big Thunder blows away the one in Florida. The Buzz Lightyear. I actually got to go on Toy Story Midway Mania at California Adventure because the lineup was only 20 minutes long, not like 3 hours that it is.
Yes.
So
I think the only ride that you can probably make an argument would be Tower of Terror. I like the one in California better, but the Fifth Dimension room, where you leave one elevator shaft and go to the next in Florida, is actually pretty cool.
Although I will say one thing. The one thing that I loved about the one in California as opposed to the one in Florida is that there's too much of a lead up in Florida before you drop.
Right.
In California, the doors slide open. You see that people get, quote unquote, hit by lightning, and the instant they drop,
you drop.
Right. And I wasn't expecting that. It caught me completely off guard, and I was just like, man, I found it so much more of an experience as opposed to, in Florida when you're in the nice air-conditioned Tower of Terror, and then that door opens and you get hit with hot Florida air.
Oh, yes.
and at that point you just start cringing, going, the ride's about to happen.
Yeah, that's the argument for having everything all in the same drop shaft, and then you've got the nicer theming, and the electricity goes into the car in California, so it's a much better ride.
And Radiator Springs Racers is just about the most unbelievable ride you'll ever experience.
Yeah. I think you'll like the Frozen animatronics. I think you'll be like wow, but it doesn't compare to Radiator Springs.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, the other thing that I really like about going to the Disney parks is the technology. Like, I watched, as much as we've been joking about waiting, in line for 5 hours to see, Frozen Ever After, I got to see that Elsa animatronic just because of the whole rear projection face technology that Disney has gotten to work. And I mean, I first saw it, in Enchanted Tales with Belle, with Lumiere, the candle.
Yeah. And with Mr. Potato Head.
Yes, and Mr. Potato Head. Yeah, and I think it was with Mr. Potato Head and Buzz Lightyear. It was really like Buzz Lightyear's the sort of the cone, and with Mr. Potato Head, it was his eyes.
Right.
But the Elsa animatronic and even the Anna animatronic, just the way that it's now the entire face, and they've got Elsa moving so realistic in that ride that it completely blew me away when I saw it. I mean, as much as as much as we all need to let it go. I definitely need to go. I knew that was coming. But I definitely need to see it just for the whole. I mean, jokingly, we were talking about California. The what is it? Great moments with Mr. Lincoln and it's very robotic. Do you know what I mean? Animatronic from back in the day to what they have now.
It's insane. I really want to go to Shanghai and see the new pirate ride. That's just mind blowing. But yeah, I think that the right answer is Disneyland over California or over Florida. But it's going to be great to have you come down. Hopefully, we can see you guys.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to do like a Rampant live from the swimming pool.
Heck yeah.
Nice.
or like you said, the People Mover, man. That's like
That's right, from the People Mover. Except we'll lose the signal when we go into Space Mountain, though.
That's true. Most likely, we'll have to bring like a really powerful LTE card or something.
That's right.
Because Disney's Wi-Fi is super spotty when you get on rides. But
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, let's. Does anybody have any questions for the world famous Kevin P. McAuliffe? I know I had to bring up Disney because I know Kevin is a Disney fanatic like ourselves, but we've pretty much asked all the questions that we had for Kevin. But if you have any additional questions for Kevin, otherwise I'm going to keep asking about Disney because it's my favorite subject. Anyone?
We gotta wait 45 seconds.
Oh, that's right.
'Cause
So
now it has to catch up.
So let me ask Kevin an intermediate question. You've been on Everest then, obviously.
Yes, and the funny thing with Everest was that the first time that I ever rode Everest, this was again probably about 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Back in the days before we were watching all these rides on YouTube before we went on them, and I didn't know anything about it. And my wife, who cannot do roller coasters, decided that she was going to be a trooper and do a roller coaster.
Oh no!
And I didn't know that it went backwards.
Oh no!
I always jokingly say that if I could have bought that one ride photo, it would have been that one. Needless to say, she will never go on Everest ever again.
Yeah, I can't get her to ride it I can't get Steph to ride it more than once.
I can ride it one time, and then the backwards portion gets me so like dizzy and sick. That's it. I can only ride it one time. Sean could ride it over and over and over and over and over again.
Oh, it's my
Never
favorite
stop.
ride. I love it.
Well, and it's funny because the first time I rode it was when the Yeti actually worked.
That was a long
That
time
was a
ago.
long time ago.
So that was, well, again, it was about 10 years ago, and now it just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything. But yeah, it was back in the days when it actually shook and came down over the car and everything. So that, and I think was that the last time I rode it? I think I may have ridden it since then. But definitely going to give that another whirl again when I go.
Right on. You'll have to check out Universal. They've actually done some really impressive things. I know you probably can't pull yourself away from Disney, but
Have you been
Yeah,
on-
that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say for me. It's just one of those things where because I like to stay on property and everything. It's just everything's there. I don't got to go anywhere. And plus, I don't. When I go to Disney, I know there's always people that will go to Disney and they'll they go there and they come back and they're like, I need a vacation for my vacation. When we do Disney, we'll go to Disney. We'll only do the parks 3 days. We'll hang out at the hotel and just chill at the pool and
Right.
do stuff like that. Go to downtown Disney or Disney Springs now, and just do that type of stuff. Just because because I work as hard as I do and because my wife works as hard as she does, it's like we just need to go and just chill out for a bit too.
yeah,
So-
that plus you're paying $350 a night for a hotel room, so you might as well get some use out of that
Yeah.
room.
True enough. True enough.
But you're doing it right. We see that all the time. That's how we do it. We don't
Yeah.
ever spend all day in the park. When friends come by, it's like 6 a.m. to midnight, and you can't do that 5 days in a row before you start trying to kill
Yeah.
people.
Oh, I know.
So yeah, go to the pool. I mean, they're really nice resorts, and you're paying for it. So try to use it every once in a while, people.
Totally.
Paul Watkins says, "What's your favorite After Effects plugin other than Mocha?"
What is my favorite After Effects plugin other than Mocha? See, the thing is, there's so many good ones. I mean, to be honest, and everyone will say Element 3D. They love Element 3D, but for me, when I look at that question, it's what effect or what plugin would I say I use the most that I think is the best, which is optical flares from Video Copilot. Now, that's and it's kind of one of those interesting things. It's because in a lot of cases I need to mimic what I see in a commercial. Again, I do a lot of reverse engineering. A lot of text that I see is made with Element. A lot of lens flares that I see. If I look at a lens flare and I'm like, that lens flare looks pretty darn realistic. And I know it's an effect. I'm like, it's got to be optical flares.
Right.
So for me, definitely optical flares. I'm trying to think of some other. I mean, Mocha. The funny thing is with Mocha, I don't even really consider Mocha a plugin because it's really sort of its own completely separate, it's a separate beast unto itself. I mean, there's so many great effects inside of the Boris Continuum Complete package. For me, I'll go through it and I'll pick effects here and there. Like, for me, if I need a God Rays effect, I'm always going back to Trap Code Shine.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because for me, that's always been the hands down best God Rays effect that there is. If I need to do like a lens flare, a specific type of lens flare, I'll go to optical flares. If I need a very specific 3D type of look, I'll use Element. In a lot of cases, believe it or not, I'll actually do 2.5D 3D, which is I've got a little script that I have that will actually take After Effects layers and place them behind each other in 3D space.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Only because in a lot of cases, I need to be very specific. And to be honest, I just don't have time to go in and learn what does diffuse and specular and highlight and what do all these do. I know what diffuse does, but it's like I don't know what all these other things do, and I just need to make sure that the actual extrusion part of my thing is a very specific color that goes from, light to dark, from inside to outside of my text. So I need to, have complete control over it. And to be honest, the only way to have complete control over it is to actually physically make it myself.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Paul asks, Pro Tools or Audition?
Oh, no, I don't know either, but Pro Tools 100%.
So you hand your audio
to be
work
honest, I'm not even sure. Like, for that's the other thing is, I mean, if you're gonna, it sounds bad when I say if you're gonna send it to a professional audio house, but to be honest, most of the audio post facilities that you will send your mixes to is all Pro Tools. You'll find ones that are Nuendo as well, but most of them are Pro Tools.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask Philip's question here?
Oh, what's your favorite restaurant inside the park? What a great question.
Parks.
My favorite restaurant
Park.
that's a good one. My favorite restaurant inside the parks. Let me think. Well, as far as the actual experience goes, my favorite one would be Akershoes. Only because I love having my pictures taken with all the princesses. No, I'm just kidding. No, but as far as character dining goes, I like Akershoes is great because it's got the princesses. We also really like the meal in there as well. We really like Tutto Italia at Epcot. My wife loves Italian food, so Tutto Italia. The one place that actually caught me really off guard that was actually really good, and believe it or not, it's a character meal, was Tusker House.
Yeah.
In Animal Kingdom. They've got so many great, they've got the quinoas and all that type of stuff that was it was really, really good. Trying to think of what else inside the parks. Epcot. Nothing really at Hollywood Studios. Even the Magic Kingdom, I'm not big on the stuff at Magic Kingdom. Mostly it's Epcot. Even we really like Nine Dragons at Epcot. We really like Nine Dragons at Epcot.
Dragons too.
Great compound.
And I always jokingly say I always see everyone online raves about Le Cellier at Canada, but I'm from Canada, and I go and I go to a place called the Keg or the Outback to get my steak. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't. We don't really have a Le Cellier here in my house that we can go to get steak from.
I also can't imagine you just walking up in front and going, "Wow, it's like I'm actually home."
Well, that's the fun. Well, come on, we're all dressed like lumberjacks and Mounties, and we ride in on our.
There's nothing.
It's funny, most of the people. I mean, we know the hotel from the front of the Canada Pavilion. For me, every time I see it, it's the Chateau Frontenac in Quebec. That's what I know it from.
Mm-hmm.
But the totem poles you see is actually from the West Coast, from Vancouver. There's a large native Canadian population that live out in Vancouver, so But it's good because I like the fact that they're kind of they're kind of showing you East Coast and West Coast, and it's a very, a lot of Ontario is very similar to United States because Toronto, as they jokingly say, is Hollywood North because whenever they shoot movies, if they need to double New York, if you take a look at Suits, for example, Suits takes place in New York. No, Suits is shot in Toronto.
Right.
All of Suits is shot in Toronto because Toronto looks exactly like New York. The only difference is, and you want to know what the funny difference is? We don't have yellow cabs here.
So they put in yellow cabs.
When they shoot Suits, they actually bring in a ton of yellow cabs to shoot Suits because we don't have yellow cabs here. We've got 10 different cab companies that are black, white, blue, green, orange, whatever. Nope, no yellow.
That's interesting.
That's cool.
So if let's put it this way, if they were going to show Ontario at the Canada Pavilion, they'd kind of be showing what any city, Orlando, Toledo, Ohio, New York City would look like. So it's great that they actually have we jokingly say about the lumberjacks and stuff like that, but it's good that they have the diversity out there, because as Canadians always like to remind our American friends, we do have the world's second largest landmass.
Yes.
Next to Asia. So, it's good that they've represented both, the East Coast and the West Coast in the Canada Pavilion.
That's true.
Yep.
I like the Canada Pavilion. We stay away from Le Cellier because it's 2 points, yo.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's
signature dining. when you can go to the Outback and have a steak, that's not 2 dining credits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And for Orlando, that's a very expensive steak.
That's right.
But you're talking about staying on property, though. What's the one that we like? The steak place that's. What's the one that we did that was amazing? That was for Valentine's Day. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Grand Floridian Cafe?
No, the Yachtsman.
Oh, the Yachtsman's very good.
Oh yes, the Yachtsman.
Also,
Yeah.
two
Yeah,
dining
that
credits.
should be more like 12 dining credits. Good gracious,
Yeah,
the
that's
bill
enough.
is like.
That's enough food to feed you for a week.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So anybody else have any questions for Kevin? He's been super gracious with his time. I know he's
Yes.
got a lot of work to do and a family to get back to. So does anybody else have any questions? It's so amazing to talk to you, Kevin. Thank you for carving out
Yes,
the time
thank you
for us,
for
man.
taking
Well,
out the
thank you
time.
for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys and to talk about to talk about that thing we do. Basically, you guys know it because you guys. Well, what's this show number 3 that you guys do in a week? I think you guys do 3 shows a week.
We do
Yes,
3
we
shows
do
a
3
week,
shows
and
a
I think
week.
your episode, what, 15, 16?
I
Oh
think
my.
so.
Something like we
I
started
mean,
on
that right
Blab.
there, just the fact that you guys are making the products, doing these, you're posting the tutorials on the site, it's a testament to Rampant and you guys, and it just goes to show with the amount of work you put into all this, you're not just putting it all into this, you're putting it all into the stuff that you design, and the trying to get the community involved in sort of the whole process, in the company, in the learning, and in everything, which is great. So
Coming
Oh,
from you, that's
thank you.
huge.
That's
You're a huge
very
inspiration
kind.
to us because you rip out tutorials and make it look easy. It is not easy for
It is not
us.
easy.
It's a long process. And I remember when Stephanie first started doing tutorials, you pulled her aside and you gave her a lot of tips and hints and to make things better, like including get rid of that time so people don't know you've edited.
yes,
Yes.
that's a good one. But she didn't listen to my best advice, which was to do Media Composer tutorials and not Final Cut ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Avid
But I
Steph.
don't want to do that because you're
Avid
pulling them.
stuff just doesn't sound as clean. Final Cut stuff has a ring to it. Avid stuff is just like what?
That's right. That's right.
But we do. Besides, we can't have her do Avid. That means you and I wouldn't work together.
That's true, because then it means I'd have to do Final Cut tutorials.
And from what I understand, you're not going to do it. So.
No, I won't. If it was Final Cut 7, I'll think about it.
But you know what? You're a huge inspiration to us because we all work in a bubble, and that's what the show's about. We all end up working with either by ourselves or in a small group of people, and only the rest of us really understand what we all go through. And everyone has a great story. You've been a huge inspiration to me because at 1:00 in the morning, when I'm ready to flip the table and say this, I'm out of here. You're still working, so I'm like, well, if Kevin can do it, and he's got way more responsibilities than I do, then I shouldn't have any complaints, and I can do it too.
And it's funny because it's weird when we go to NAB and we go to the Media Motion Ball, because then there's like 200 of us in the room that are all
Right.
exactly the same, which is really mind blowing.
Yeah, it is, and it's like, wow, I'm talking to you in real time and not through chat.
That's right.
sometimes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It
thank
looks like
you.
we are out. Paul says Irish pub at downtown Disney. I'm sure you've been there.
I went there, and I think I had deep fried Snickers bars there.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they-
yes,
That's
they
behind
do.
the bar. Yeah. That's
Yes.
insane.
We were there, and my wife said, "You need to try it because you're here, so try it." So I tried it. It was actually really good. Yeah, you can't go to downtown Disney without going to the Irish pub. So
Nice.
no, not with the last name like Mullen or McAuliffe. Thank you very much.
Right.
Right.
And we always find your crest every time we go
We
somewhere.
do.
We end up finding your
I
crest before we
remember.
find
Yes,
ours.
I think you saw it. Was it at Universal at Hogwarts or something like
Yeah.
that? You was on the McAuliffe coat of arms. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we keep having this lady yell at us that we're using the wrong coat of arms. Like, okay, sorry. I like the one with the swords. Okay, stop.
That's right. Well, we're 3 mermaids surrounded by 3 stars. So there you go.
So yeah, there's nothing wrong with mermaids. That's awesome. You can't go wrong with that. Well, thank you everybody for watching.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Kevin. This will
Thank
be
you for
online.
having
We're going to go ahead and put all your contact information, your personal address and phone number for people to get in touch with you. No, not that last part. Just.
Not the last part.
But thank you so much. Guys, if you don't know Kevin, you need. We'll put a link to his tutorials. Some of the absolute best training on the planet, and he cites Brian as one of his gurus. So the man has the best training. He also has tons of training at Rampant. We'll send links to that as well. Make sure to check him out any way you can. He's always posting on an infinite number of Facebook user groups, and
Just about every Facebook user group that you're on, you're probably
Kevin's
seeing the
there.
tutorials pop up, except in the Final Cut one or in the Premiere one, because we're specifically avid tutorials here. But if they're Premiere ones that pop up, they always get posted in there as well. So
my favorite though is every time a new OS update is posted, you're like, hey guys, it's Friday night in the middle of a project. I'm gonna go ahead and update, right?
that's right. It's the long weekend too, and the deadline's looming. Should I do it? Let's do it.
Let's go ahead and pull the trigger, see what happens. Oh. So thank you everybody for showing up.
Yes,
it's so
thank
awesome.
you.
Kevin, you actually right now, as of this second, you've had the largest crowd that we've had on Rampant Live. So
There you go.
it's a testament to the rock star that you are. Thank you so much for everything, guys. Thank you everyone for watching. And this is every Tuesday and Thursday
At 9 p.m. Eastern. If you want to catch the replay or any other past shows, you can always go to rampantlive.com. We're also on iTunes and on YouTube. So
and Stitcher. And
And
Vimeo.
Stitcher. However you watch us, you can find us. So
And if you want to be on the
look us
show,
up.
what happens? What do we do?
If you want to be on the show, you can contact me. There'll be a link down at the bottom. Send me an email with your name, and I'll get back to you and put you on the schedule.
Down at the bottom where?
The bottom of the video.
Oh, you're going to put it in the video? It's usually just at Rampant Live. Oh, that's
It's
cool
on
to know.
every video
Oh, sweet.
now.
Check that out. I should start watching the show. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kevin. This has been fantastic, and we love each and every one of you. And thank you so much for your time, Kevin. You are an amazing human being.
Yes,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
All right, catch you all later.
Bye.
Just keep waving. Thanks for watching Rampant Live. See ya.